Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Eric's Philosophy Talk videos. I'm host Eric. You know, some of you may wonder, host Eric, what the hell? Do you just sit around and make videos all day? Me? No, I don't. I work on shit in between. I go in little bursts, you know? I'm kind of on Thanksgiving week right now. And I got a lot of things in place now, right? I put in a handle on shit. I got all my second semester blurb stuff up and running. Tomorrow we gotta finish that. Tomorrow's a big day for me. I gotta put a lot of work in tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff I gotta get done. But it's extremely helpful having a team of people. And my kids are great. Anyway, the reason I say that is because it's something I'm assessing for myself, you know, like I am a businessman. I do focus a lot on playing, but you know, for me, when I assess the way things are going down objectively, I'm getting plenty of stuff done. Business is moving right along. I don't know, I feel like I'm neglecting stuff, which is always a bad feeling, you know? It's a feeling of failure. But I want to start with this, I guess, because I want to use this as a way to intro into some talk about using time magic on yourself, which is what I call flexible faith in general. If you are in a bad spot right now, it's very difficult to change your reality dramatically. Chances are you're in a bad spot means you've got little opportunity probably to spend on working all this shit out, right? Let's say, for example, you're an addict like I was. This is the best example I can give because it's the one that's familiar to me. But maybe your problem is some sort of codependent relationship. Maybe your problem is, I don't know, social anxiety or eating too many Twix bars. Or eating them at totally inappropriate times, like when you're making a video. That's a problem I have. Fortunately, it's one side. I don't love Twix. Twix are bad. Totally the best candy bar. Facebook, you're gonna be the death of me. So yeah. People are going to give a lot of glib answers to somebody who's in a dark spot or a difficult spot. The reality is the specifics of what have to be done to get you out of that dark spot are going to vary considerably depending on the nature of that dark spot. There's one thing I could tell you, though, that was very helpful for me, which is when I was trying to quit drinking, and I had failed lots of times before. I didn't think it was possible. I was pretty sure it wasn't possible. But I had sufficient desperation to attempt something I was dead set against, which was the non-rational behavioral approach solution. And in short parlance, that means prayer. You need to engage in prayer. And what I want to stress for my rationalist friends out there, you can jettison this later. You are not agreeing to believe in anything. You are agreeing to engage in a behavior. This behavior is to, first and foremost, to pray earnestly, which is to say, to pray while not actively disbelieving, choosing to not engage in internal dialogue that stresses the absurdity of what you're doing, the falseness of what you're doing, or the failure intellectually of anyone who would advocate such a thing. That's step one. The process is done specifically to humble the rationalist's ego in a way that allows him to access what I suspect is FI, an introverted feeling. I think that's what I had to do to get sober, is I had to access introverted feeling. And it's not in my stack. I'm pretty sure that's what I had to do. Now, it just came to me right now, that's what happened. Anyway, you have to pray, and you have to try to find and feel resonance with God, you know. And it probably won't work. Not really. Not all the way. But you'll emerge from the process, and you have to do it until it works. I mean, that's the thing. As you're doing it, it is working. What's it working on? Well, if you want to take a wholly rationalist approach on it, if you're a rationalist, it's working by opening up your unaccessible, normally, cognitive functions. Prayer is not in our stack. I'm talking to the NTs here, right? So that's why we need to do it. And that's where you start to develop the habits of flexible faith. Once you realize, okay, people who are operating on this plane, which is to say the plane of faith, the plane of belief, the plane of committing to single ideas with all one's heart and soul, so to speak, the power of belief becomes opened up to the rationalist. Once the power of belief comes into play for the rationalist, then basically they go Super Saiyan, or they go Sage mode to reference Naruto. To Dragon Ball Z, which is the first reference. Another way to put it would be I don't know. I'm trying to think of another Naruto reference. I don't like the way that my jaw, I'm an overbite. That's how it naturally sits. Wish it were more out a little bit. Oh well. Not something I ever think about, right? My appearance or anything like that. But since I am single, I am thinking about it because I'm a self-preservation person. Which means when I'm single, I want to lock some shit down, you know? And be like, you're my woman now, and now you play with me. And then hopefully she'd be down to play the things I like to play at. You know, what are there? Like making videos. She's like this, you know? Ideally, I get a woman I can integrate into my business as well. That would be very helpful, but not necessary. Anyway, so what was I talking about in this video? Oh, right. Flexible faith. So let's say you're suffering from feelings of worthlessness associated with a relationship having ended, a sense of losing something that was precious to your identity, and maybe you're haunted by thoughts of not being able to find a new relationship. That'd be one example of somebody who's in a bad spot, in a time period of internal struggle. May or may not be associated with external struggle. So, how do you employ this technique in that? Let's take this example person. Let's call her Judy. Let's call her 34 years old. Let's say that she's gotten out of a marriage where the husband was not faithful or something, and she didn't realize that until several years of it going on, and she's feeling betrayed and all the stuff that one goes through when one's been cheated on. I've been cheated on. That's how my first marriage ended, and it sucked ass. It sucked so much ass. It tore me to fucking pieces. So I feel you. If you're, I don't have any residual feelings from that now, but it makes me feel for you if you're one of those people who's undergoing that right now. I know how fucked up it is. How do you deal with it? Well, the flexible faith thing tells us a couple of things. First of all, if you're a rationalist, you need to engage in prayer. If you're not a rationalist, if you're not an NT, if you're something like SF, there's a decent chance you're already pretty in tune with this angle, and you may need to go to step 2, okay? But let's make sure we get step 1 down first. So for the non-religious, non-prayers, you got to do that, and that'll open up some belief pathways to you, whether you want it to or not, as long as you're humble enough to follow the instructions I gave earlier. And remembering that you don't have to believe anything. At the end, you probably get rid of it, right? But it's easy to become a necessary component in the whole thing. At a certain point, you realize you don't need God in the equation. But that doesn't mean you can skip this part. It won't work at all. Okay? You can't skip it. That's the thing. You cannot fake your way into introverted feeling, right? You can't think your way into it. You've got to anti-think your way into it. So, alright. So now that we know that we've done that, then what are we going to do next? Well, at this point, you need to start engaging in active magical thinking. If you are a rationalist, if you are already engaging in active magical thinking, then you need to try a different process here, because this isn't going to work for you. What you need to do is basically the opposite of, you need to access your thinking functions. You need to access your yada yada yada. So that's for a different video. I'm not even going to talk to those people. I'm trying to manage them in this video as impossible. So for rationalists, NTs, I don't know if this is for T's in general. Maybe it's just for all T's, but it might just be for rationalists. Regardless, after you've done the prayer thing, after you open up the evidence belief, then you need to start applying this flexible faith technology, which is really what it is. You're installing new technology into your brain, and that means engaging in magical thinking. And the first stage of magical thinking is God-related magical thinking. And it's predicated on the notion that God wants you to do something specific on any given day or in any given hour or whatever. That if there's a circumstance you're faced with, you position it through an angle of, what does God want me to do? Now, this compels you to consider the nature of God, of course. You won't know what He wants you to do unless you think about who He is and what kind of things He wants in general. And even if you don't feel as though, well, I can't possibly answer that question because I don't know enough about what God wants, even if I accept it as a premise that He exists, I don't know enough about what He wants to even speculate on that. Well, at that point, you're not being humble enough. You can speculate. Try harder. So, fine, you speculated. It's what God wants. And you're looking for signs as well, signs from God. Things like, if there's something that's frustrating you, balking you in some sense, a barrier, I used to think anyway, when I was engaged in this process, this part of the stage of the process actively, I would think to myself, okay, I'm trying to get back to this spot over there, and I'm stuck in this part of town. There's no taxis around. How am I going to get back? I have to walk to the subway, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what does God want me to get out of this? God has denied me taxis for some reason. Usually I can get one around here, but right now, it's the wrong time of day. This is like when I was in Shanghai, this happened, right? And I was just a couple months sober. And so I'd walk down to the subway, and I'd walk along, and then there's a woman selling a fishing pole on the street. And I've been talking ever since I got into Shanghai about how I wanted to get a fishing pole and go fishing. And then obviously put two and two together. This is God denied me a taxi so I could find this woman selling, this random woman randomly selling a fishing pole, and standing in the middle of the sidewalk. She had like two items for sale: binoculars and a fishing pole. And there's like no fishing poles I could find anywhere in Shanghai except if you were to like go to this place in Pudong called, I forget what it's called. It's like a big sporting goods store. Anyway, so now the rationalist is going to be like, well, that's not, Eric, it could have been anything right there. The connection was something you talked about in the previous few weeks, and so that's confirmation bias. Well, yeah, sure, fine, whatever, who cares? The point is, you choose at that point to make that connection. I'm supposed to buy this fishing pole. And you buy it. And sometimes nothing comes of it. I never did go fishing. I never got around to it. Why did God make me buy that fishing pole? So I could tell you about it in this video. That's how it works. See, flexible faith. There's always some explanation you can come up with that makes perfectly good sense, that coordinates with what you ought to do, what you want to do, who you actually are. That's why you need to frame it like this stuff. Because, first of all, when you start looking for these sort of things, these weird connections and things, I'm just incredulous about the way that my life unfolds. Incredulous the way that people come and go. Incredulous the way that everything happens so right when and as it should in meaningful and interesting ways that resolve difficulties, yada yada yada, all that shit, right? It's magic. It can't be anything else. It's magic. Now look, even if you don't want to believe any of this stuff, it doesn't matter. Practice it. Once you get in the habit of reframing these things as ways that God is hooking you up or helping you out or giving you clues as to what you ought to do because he's got a plan for you. Once you think that, oh, my nose is so itchy. I try not to wipe my nose so much on these videos because when I watch it and I see it, it annoys me. But especially in the winter when it's cold and I can't have the doors open or anything, it gets very particulate filled in here. I got the dryer on to blow warm air into the garage, which makes it nice, but shoots out lint and smokers of the smoke, and they've got a cat and a dog, and you know what else. So when you engage in this flexible faith process, you need to have a roadmap going on in your head. This is the second step. Keep a roadmap in your head. When you draw these connections, make a note of them somewhere. Write it down. Keep a blog or something. Even if it's not public, you can just sort of make a note of how these connections fit in. Speculate. Speculate, speculate, speculate. What might Alright. So as you're doing this, you're going to find some things happening. First of all, when you're praying, make sure you're praying for the character qualities you need to fulfill your duties to fix the problems in your life, whatever they might be, or to feel better, or whatever. Ask specifically for opportunities and indications of the right path. These things, whatever your reasoning behind it is, they're going to reframe your mind into thinking about it in those terms, and it's going to carry through with you during the day. Try to do it. Revisit that prayer state multiple times during the day if you can. When you're riding in a car or something. Get comfortable with it. Get comfortable with it so you're not embarrassed anymore. Because you're going to be embarrassed with yourself at first. What am I doing? What is this? Oh, what am I talking? I'm just talking to nobody in my head, like usual. Right? But don't. Don't be embarrassed. Try to believe it. You'll see how satisfying it is. You probably won't stick with it, like I said. I haven't really stuck with it, but occasionally I'll revisit that place. Once you've practiced it a lot, and I mean a lot. Now listen, when I was in Shanghai, I was there for a couple months, and I was praying the shit out of every day. And I remember when it reached its zenith, and it pulled back. And you cannot rush this process. You've got to let it happen. And once it's done, it does, and you're engaging in this process, you'll start to see various things happening, right? Various things start opening up, and you won't even notice it at first. It's not going to seem like anything. You don't realize how much better you are, except it plateaus, or at least I didn't. You don't understand what it means to be healthy, except it plateaus. And it takes a long time. Whatever your problem is, if it's serious enough for you to deal with in a way that I had to deal with alcohol, it's going to take a while to become really healthy. you'll immediately stop being sick. It doesn't mean you're healthy right away, right? If you're trying to quit some sort of drug or alcohol. If you are an alcoholic and you're trying to quit alcohol, remember, it's its own problem. It's distinct from everything else. If your problem is alcohol, quit alcohol. Don't touch it at all. Do not touch one drop of it. And if you absolutely have to handle the of the whole thing, then find something else to substitute the alcohol. And some other intoxicant might be okay. It's not the end of the world. Just remember who your real enemy is. It's alcohol. Always remember that. Okay? So I don't know if anybody out there is in that position, but that's what I'm telling you is do the AA thing if it works for you. If it doesn't, try this methodology. It's basically takes all the what I consider to be the real sort of useful parts of AA and coalesces it down into a single process or two. A lot of stuff's unnecessary. The key things are, number one, admit you're powerless and that your life would become unmanageable. That thing, you have to do that. You have to. And you're going to say, but I'm not powerless. Not by any literal definition of the word. You can give me all sorts of good reasons as to why you're not powerless. And I will agree, but I will also say, you have to give up any thought of controlling this. You're never going to. It just is. So you got to do that. And then the second thing you have to do is commit FI to it. That means prayer. I'd strongly recommend AA meetings too for the first few months. I did them for about 5 months. And when I was in Shanghai, man, I did them all the time. A couple a day at least. I mean, probably average 2 a day. Or I probably averaged less than 2 a day, because there are some days I didn't go at all. But, you know, on an average day, I probably went twice. See the difference, yeah. If a problem's big enough that it's causing you significant distress in your life, then your job needs to be to deal with that problem. And it's not for anybody else but for you. If you have an addiction that is making you miserable, if you have an addiction that's causing you to make mistakes that are regrettable and that you regret and that you wish you could undo, well, I've got some bad news. You can't undo any of them. What you can do is get sober. It's not the end of the world. It seems like the end of the world. It seems impossible. If you're in the midst of an addiction right now, you're thinking to yourself, fuck no. No way I'm quitting this shit. Whatever it is. I can't even imagine it. What would I do? Well, the answer is you replace it with AA meetings, prayer, and if need be, some other intoxicant. But what you don't do is drink. I don't have any advice for any other addictions, to be perfectly honest. I keep using the term kind of broadly here, and that's dumb. I have advice about alcohol, and my advice is, if you even think you might have a problem, I'd quit, man. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. For anybody who drinks too much, and I would say a much higher percentage of people who drink have some kind of a problem than is commonly accepted. That would be my argument. But then, I'm biased in that fashion. I'm immersed in that sort of consumption world, I guess. Or was, anyway. And my itchy nose is so itchy. It's also a mustache and little hairs. So yeah, you got an alcohol problem. The answer is what I'm describing to you. I am absolutely convinced in my own head that would work for most any significant problem. That all significant problems, they tie somehow to some kind of an addiction. Whether it's an addiction to people, like codependency, whether it's an addiction to food, whether it's an addiction to gambling, whether it's an addiction to drugs or alcohol, whether it's an addiction to fear. Somebody who's overly shy or something. So faith allows us a way to experience intuition that is not the same as extroverted intuition. It might be introverted intuition, might be introverted feeling. I don't really know what it is, but it works. And you can persist in the behaviors of faith without employing all the language of faith after you do the faith boot camp thing I described. You have to do it. You can't just skip it. You can't think your way through that. It's the only way you're going to unleash those other cognitive functions. So, Piao